Now, I'm going to back to Professor Mayer. First, Ms. Helfer mentioned the example of the underperformers, and that is a comment from the Ms. Helfer. And Nakagami-san talked about the work and sweat activists in Japan. So if you have any reply on these two comments, that would be
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for those two very excellent presentations, which I think really reinforce what I'm trying to argue in a very clear fashion. And that is that activism of the right sort is a very important contribution to achieving what I'm putting forward as being the purpose of a business: to solve problems profitably and not to profit from producing problems. And that the types of engagement that we heard from both Frederica and Nakagami-san is that the involvement of long-term activist funds that are focused on improving efficiency and performance creates real benefits and overcomes the detriments associated with failing long-term owners. And that's exactly the message that I've been trying to convey, that it's a mixture of the two that is required, namely the combination of long-term perspectives and also the ability to increase efficiency where long-term owners are failing, that is required to deliver that notion of producing profitable solutions. And the cases that Frederica mentioned about failing large block holders, absolutely right, that there are many cases of companies that have stable owners, where those stable owners have been a serious impediment. There are also examples of where those large long-term block holders have been the source of tremendous success on a broad scale in terms of not just financial performance, but societal contribution as well. And some of the industrial foundations have been incredibly successful on both scores. And one example that I frequently cite is the case of Novo Nordisk as being a foundation that really has made major contributions societally and also in terms of its financial performance. So what the recipe that's being put forward here is that neither the extreme of having dispersed shareholders, which rely on the markets for corporate control as being the ways of remedying deficiencies of failing dispersed ownership companies, nor long-term shareholders without any form of engagement by outside shareholders. Neither of those appear to be the right way to go, but that a combination of long-term shareholders, where those long-term shareholders and the employees, etc., are focused on the purpose of the business and contributing towards the successful delivery of that purpose, and not there simply to represent their particular vested interests, then those, combined with the potential of outside interventions where necessary to create long-term restructuring of businesses, are the most productive ones in terms of their contribution to society and their contribution to their shareholders.
Thank you, Professor Mayer. And Professor Franks, do you have any reply?
Well, let me literally take about 1.5 minutes. We have seen in the UK and US the more than halving of the number of listed companies on our stock markets. They've been taken private or they've merged. We have seen the partial eclipse of the public listed corporation. Activism is an alternative to private equity. It is an alternative to hostile takeovers. It is also evolving, becoming more collaborative, and I think, certainly in Europe and in Japan, I hope a little quieter. We do need more active and responsible owners. And activism has a very important role to play here. I do want to respond in one sense. Although I talked about short-term stock market performance, we looked at the alpha over the entire period of the engagement. And the conclusion is that where activists gain outcomes, the long-term alpha is positive. And where they do not get outcomes, there is no alpha at all. So I think activism has a role to play in ownership, in more active ownership. And I want to thank the discussants for some extremely insightful comments. I'm very grateful to them. Thank you again.
Thank you, Professor Franks, for your reply. And I'm sorry, I don't have time to take questions. But finally, I'd like to invite Professor Miyajima for the closing comments.
So thank you so much for two presenters, Colin and Julian. And also we really appreciated Fidelity and Nakagami-san's brilliant comment. And in this episode 3, we learned quite a lot. And so various forms of ownership around the world. And we understand the Colin's idea of a parallel ownership between outside shareholder and committed long-term shareholder. And I think that what is impressive in this session is so different from conventional wisdom in Japan. That means the activism in Japan is either rare or confrontational one represented by steady partners or so on. But recently, the activist fund in Japan take various forms. And also we get the idea that activist fund is the alternative or substitute to private equity or hostile takeovers. So we learned quite a lot in this context. So today is we are mainly focusing on the role of activist fund, and next time, episode 4, we move to traditional institutional investor, such as passive fund, trust banks, and the insurance company supported by universal asset owner, such as the GPIF. This episode 4 is planned on June 18th, same time, 16 at Japan time, and early morning 8 o'clock in GMT. And the next presenter is along with Colin. We are expecting to have Ranger Gibson, and as a commentator, we will have Belém Bellalonga, as well as the one expert on the institutional investor in Japan. Again, thank you so much for brilliant presentation comments. So now it should be closed. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Miyajima. So that's closed our session today. And thank you very much, Professor Mayer and Professor Franks and Ms. Helfer and Mr. Nakagami. I think we had a very good discussion, much discussion, both from the academic perspective and the business reality perspective. Thank you all so much for participating. And thank you very much again for Professor Miyajima for excellent guiding. That closes our session today.
Thank you.